and welcome to today's session of the Natural Birth Summit. The title of today's session is Beyond Supplements, Holistic Nutrition for Natural Birth. And we're fortunate to have Stacey Turner with us. Hi, Stacey.
Hey, Adam. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to be talking to you. Following a degree in nutrition and professional work in that space, Stacey has pursued a passion for natural health practitioner and has worked as a holistic dietitian, a yoga and meditation teacher, and a water birth advocate. Stacey has been working in health for 10 years and has birthed two of her own babies via informed decisions. Stacey loves supporting couples in the lead up to getting pregnant and preparing for birth. Having experienced a beautiful home birth in water with her youngest only a year ago. Thank you, Stacey. That's great. Right, so we're going to start the conversation by talking about supplements and the traditional advice and information that people are given about pregnancy and nutrition and supplements. So could you start by covering what is it that the traditional advice has told us?
Absolutely. And, it's so interesting because sometimes when people find out that they are pregnant, the first thing that they go and do is after they've, peed on a stick, they'll go and see their doctor or their GP and say, okay, what now? And the first thing that happens is they get told to go and buy a box of pills from the store, or there's,
Right.
particular brands, especially here in Australia, jump on that straight away. And that's once people are already pregnant. So I want to even backtrack a little more and say if people are consciously conceiving their babies, that it is worthwhile considering what nourishment is happening, both, in terms of food and potentially supplements, if that's the right thing for somebody, based on what is going on with their health, even prior to falling pregnant, if they have that option. But then once getting pregnant, maybe it's not about going and buying a bottle of pills, rather than focusing on the nutrition, the food that we're eating, the stress that surrounds us, the mental, emotional response as well. So I think taking into consideration all facets of health, not just take this pill, which is, I guess, a very mainstream or traditional Western way of just dealing with health in general, is to go see a doctor and to be given a script or a suggestion of some kind of something to go and take. So I guess the first thing I want to start with is, as a birthing mother or as a family, you get to discern anything that goes into or onto your body. And that starts with the supplements that you may be suggested to take. Question it. Question everything, is going to be my motto. And, if you're suggested to take something that begins, especially here in Australia, that begins with an E and rhymes with Benefit. I don't know if you guys have over in the UK. My first suggestion is to maybe speak to other holistic health practitioners and see if there's a different option out there, whether that is a prenatal or some kind of supplement, which in my experience I did take, but now I'm starting to look at other options out there and, how can we nourish ourselves through real food? And what other options are there in terms of, maybe it is still supplements, but supplements based on activated vitamins and minerals rather than synthetic versions.
Yeah, so activated meaning within a whole food. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, definitely. From the food that we, buy, from the food that we grow. Unfortunately, what we know about the food that we have accessible to us these days is that it's not as nutrient dense as it once was. So even though somebody might be investing in organic fruit and veg or free range meat and grass fed, beautiful organic quality stuff, wild caught fish, these are kind of the foods that we want to be focusing on, and lots of healthy fats, avoiding seed oils and polyunsaturated fats. But if we're not getting all of the nutrients that we do need from our food, then we do need to consider other options. And so I guess what I'm getting at is potentially things like beef liver capsules and oyster capsules. So it's still in a supplement form from the outside eye, but the quality of what we are consuming through those capsules is actually real food items that are so nutrient dense that are going to help you and your baby to be nourished even before you even get pregnant, like really setting your body up for success to create a really fertile ground. And so they are some options, and it's something that I've definitely started to explore and be more open to. But being completely transparent, that's not what I did for my pregnancies, because I've only recently come to learn about these other options. And this is how me and my husband now nourish ourselves and our children, through these, more holistic supplements with more active ingredients. But from experience and what I have been recommended for many years to my clients and to my patients, I don't really want to call them patients because they're not sick, to my clients that are getting pregnant, is supplements that contain activated forms of our B vitamins. And this is actually really important to bring up. If you are going to be taking some kind of prenatal or preconception supplement during your pregnancy and your postpartum phase, and even your preconception if you're prior to getting pregnant, please make sure that it's got methylated folate in rather than folic acid. This is actually a really key point, because folic acid is man-made, it is synthetic, and for a lot of the population worldwide, we have a genetic mutation. So 1 in 3 people have a genetic mutation that doesn't allow them to methylate synthetic folic acid properly, and it clogs up their system and can actually potentially cause pregnancy loss or trouble getting pregnant. And
wow,
it's pretty big stuff. Yeah. So there is a lot of research being done on this area. And I worked alongside a company here in Australia called Kin, as a consultant with their research and development for their prenatal, because they already knew about getting an activated folate in their product, along with all of the other methylated B vitamins. And so I'm not saying that this is, better than any other brand, but it's just one that I know of here in Australia that does make sure they get good quality ingredients into their prenatal. And I know there are other brands here and worldwide that do this, but when you're a consumer looking at this, or, a pregnant person looking at these options, has this got folic acid in, please avoid, or has this got activated methylfolate or any kind of folate rather than folic, is going to be what people are really looking for there.
Right. So when within the realm of supplements, there are differences that are really key, I think is what you're saying. I just wanted to come back to something you said earlier on, where you really hinted about the bigger picture than just the question of nutrition, in which you seem to be alluding to the complexity of the body, and that just putting a pill inside you with it that says it'll make everything okay, that this isn't enough. It doesn't do justice to that complexity of that system. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Absolutely. When we first started our nutrition business over 7 years ago together, me and my husband, we would just give people meal plans, and we couldn't work out why some people were having success and some people weren't. And when we started to get into the nitty-gritty of it, and the more I've explored around, mind-body connection and metaphysical side of things, it's a lot about what's going on in here. So what's going on between the ears. So mindset is a massive factor, but also how stressed somebody's body is. So we've got our 2 nervous systems. We've got our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest, where we actually want to spend 95% of our day. And then we've got our stress response, or our fight or flight mode, where we're meant to only spend about 5% of our day, but most of us are the other way around. And highly in our stress response. So already, our mindset has shifted away from calm and clarity and focus and being able to think clearly, to this mayhem and this anxiety and this challenge around life in general. We're in a very fast-paced world where things are pulling us in 50 million different directions. And when we're thinking about pregnancy and then birth, if we are in our stress response, things are not going to unfold the way that they're meant to, or even be able to get pregnant if we are too much in our stress response. So very much so, we need to look at people or ourselves from this holistic perspective. So I like to think about what's happening for a person mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even if that's something that they're open to or resonates with them. And birth is a very spiritual journey, regardless of what anybody thinks about it as their preconceived
Right.
idea. And then we've obviously got the physical, which most people think of when they think about growing a baby or birthing a baby. And then they think about food from a physical perspective. You know, we eat more food, we get bigger, we eat less food, we get smaller. But it's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as following a meal plan or, yeah, popping a pill and expecting that everything's going to be okay. So it's starting to look at what stresses do people have in their life, and are they looking after themselves from that mental emotional perspective to bring themselves back to that parasympathetic nervous system more of the time, so that their health can be balanced rather than constantly in a cortisol driven state.
Right. Right. I think there's that's certainly something that one hears more about these days. I mean, there's a lot of talk about inflammation, and inflammation is a stress response, isn't it?
Right.
Do you think that a lot of the communication around inflammation and anti-inflammatories, is that too often dealing with symptoms and not enough around the parasympathetic state and causes?
100%. Yeah, Adam, you are spot on
Yeah.
there. You know, when we were running a podcast through our business, we would interview a lot of doctors and a lot of health professionals. It's the Chief Life podcast. It's still on Spotify and Apple if people did want to check it out. And
Right.
we've talked a lot about inflammation because it is such an issue within people's bodies. And, often people go straight to take the anti-inflammatories, pop the pills, and they're looking at the band-aid solution on this side rather than thinking, well, what's caused that in the first place? What's the root cause? Where's this coming from? And how can
Yeah.
we help to heal the body and help to reduce inflammation? And that can even be from the thoughts we think can
Yeah.
impact that, which is really
Yeah.
powerful. Which then in turn, if there is an inflammatory response in the body, that's kind of a self-perpetuating cycle for the individual. And so we need to stop what's happening there and allow the person to start to think differently, to start to fuel their bodies differently, to start to move their bodies differently, from that being a personal trainer and a yoga teacher. These are all things that we have complete control over. And I'm so passionate about encouraging people to start to look at the way that they're moving their body. Is it for punishment or for pleasure? And the way that
Right.
they're nourishing their bodies, is it hurting them or is it helping them? So really just coming back to themselves and asking those questions, tuning into their own intuition and taking back their own power rather than giving it to the personal trainer who's telling them what to do. Does this feel right in my
Right.
body? Should I be doing this? And then those tools are so useful throughout pregnancy to tune into your body and your baby. And then throughout the birth and the labor experience, or the labor and then birthing your baby, when you truly have a connection with yourself and your own intuition, it's a skill that you have to develop, but that can be started even through the foods that you want to eat. And for some women, when they're pregnant, they feel so sick. If I'm saying like, you need to eat X, Y, Z, and they're saying, well, I can't eat anything right now, so this is not helping me, then it's
Yeah.
inviting them to come back to their intuition and say, maybe you're nauseous because right now you shouldn't be eating meat. And when you feel up to it, then maybe bring it back into your diet. Speaking
Right.
from personal
Okay.
experience, intense nausea for my first trimester in both of my pregnancies. I was a couch potato. This is why my husband won't let me get pregnant again. He's like, no, I'm not doing this again where he just lays around. All jokes aside, he does all the cooking. So, he's an amazing man. But yeah, there were periods of time where I could not eat what I thought was healthy based on my degree in nutrition, and started to
Yeah.
kind of beat myself up about that. And now everything I've learned is trust my intuition, trust my body, trust what I was being guided to in those moments. Because right then it was, this thick of hummus on a gluten-free piece of toast because I'm a celiac. And that was all I could manage, but that made me feel good. That was what I
Right.
needed in mentally, emotionally, and then bone broth, all of the bone broth. I had this beautiful concentrate that I would add hot water to, and that made me feel like Superwoman. So these are the sorts of things that I've had lived experience with. I can make suggestions to, you know, the beautiful clients that I get to work with, and other people that are listening to this going, yes, I'm really nauseous. How do I solve that problem? I have all the tricks in the book for that. But you're going to have to try them on for size, see which ones fit, which ones feel good in your body, which ones don't. Ignore those and try. Every day is going to be something new.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is also that, you know, this is so looking at nutrition in context, and then practicing. I think that's a great way to phrase it. Practicing moving to this calm state, this parasympathetic state, where you are able to listen to your body. You're in a place where you can tune in to what's really happening, or what, and then you can start to think in a more considered way. What's right? What's the right thing for me? What is it? What is my body calling for? And what's going to help me? And all those things. And when you start to go down that road, you feel less out of control and more that you're the benefit of feeling, yeah, I'm making active decisions that are helpful, and that's a road in the right direction, isn't it?
100%. Yes, love that.
So that's a good start, Stacey. Thanks. And tell us about how that question of what's the right things to be eating, how does that changes through pregnancy, and what's the way for people to think about that so that they notice that things that did work now maybe don't work, and what should I try next?
Definitely. I think, you know, as you move through your pregnancy, you will potentially find that you're forced to slow down. And even from the start, if you are experiencing a lot of nausea, you'll be forced to slow down. And as you were saying before, Adam, that forces you to really go kind of inward and really get into your parasympathetic nervous system, slow down, and be able to tune into what you need as an individual. Now, if people are experiencing nausea in that first trimester, you know, sometimes that's the first indicator that somebody realizes that they are pregnant. It's because they're starting to feel sick. And
Right.
so smells are not working for you. You know, for me, it was coffee. I could not stand the smell of coffee. I would think I was going to vomit the second I smelt it. So in that sort of situation where it's like a physical response to a scent or a fragrance, you're probably going to have to remove yourself from the situation. And that can also be challenging from the perspective you don't want to share with people that you're pregnant yet. So it's like this very taboo topic or time where, you know, you're
Right.
trying to keep yourself, but it's a very kind of obvious outwardly thing. And so the
Yeah.
first lesson in self-awareness there is honoring what you and your baby need. And if the smell is making you feel sick, removing yourself, regardless of what anybody else thinks of you and what's socially acceptable. You know, if
Right.
that's taking yourself outside and then apologizing later or whatever that might be. I know this is not specifically focused on what foods you're eating, but it's a very important thing, because when you fight against those reflexes, you're starting to tell your body that you're not going to listen to it. And then it will start to do things to kind
Right.
of protect
Yeah.
you more. So very much honoring what is coming up and taking it as a lesson or an alarm bell for paying attention to what you need as an individual. And so, yeah, for example, scent, smell, that's a big one. And then that's going to dictate what you then feel up to eating. So if you're feeling sick because of the smells that you're smelling, like my husband was not allowed to wear aftershave. We had to stop with the synthetic fragrances altogether. And that was kind of the start of our low tox journey into getting him over to, you know, using different deodorants and essential oils
Right.
as,
Right.
but then that leads into, so one day, you know, you'll be able to eat, yeah, meat and vegetables, and the next day it's not going to happen. And rather than beating yourself up about that, it's honoring, okay, I don't know what I want, but if the person that's going to help me with getting food into my body can just give me a few suggestions as they suggest the food, you can kind of go, does that make me feel sick or does that make me feel excited? And so it would be like, you know, one day
Right.
grass-fed sausages and veggies would be great. And then the next day, it's like, don't even talk to me about sausages and vegetables. I do not want to hear you even say those words because I'm going to go barf if you say that again. Just kind of riding those waves. And you know what's really interesting about these experiences is each one of them is teaching us a lesson, not only about our pregnancy and potentially how our labor and birth might unfold, but it's the setup for parenting.
Right.
And
Okay.
I truly believe that mental emotional journey or roller coaster that you experience through your birth or through your pregnancy and then your birth is literally setting you up for success for parenting, right? Because this is just the start of having children. And so
Yeah.
when you learn how to, if you've been a type A personality that needs everything rigid and you need to follow the meal plan and XYZ, which was me, and then you're invited to explore different options and go with the flow a bit more and know that, being perfect isn't actually a thing, it's a fantasy. When you go through those growth experiences and those growth phases, and you're kind with yourself, you're compassionate with yourself, and you just try and pivot in the moment with food, with whatever decision it might be, based on where you're being guided, that then gives you tools to use when you are working with a 3.5-year-old later on in your journey.
Right. Right. I really get that. And I think, I mean, I would reflect that back and say that being a parent is one of the things that's really important is noticing the small things in the child that's dependent on you. And I guess you could argue that that becoming that person who does notice, who picks up on everything and can support their baby to the best of their ability, that starts with noticing things about yourself and being open to those kind of signals. And so you're talking about, I think, nurturing that habit of noticing and using that information as you go through pregnancy. That's not just about pregnancy, that's building that habit, isn't it? So that you become the parent that you really would like to be.
Yes, from the start of pregnancy, as soon as you know that you are pregnant, starting to build, and I love it, and nurturing that relationship with your baby, because that is actually going to support you through your labor and birth as well. Like through your pregnancy, yes, but then when it's you and that baby, like the two of you get to do that birthing experience together, you need to be communicating. And, that's not on a language base, that's on a mental, emotional, and tuning into where they are in your body, and allowing them to move through that journey with you. That
Yeah.
starts at the very start of pregnancy.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Okay, if I can move us on then, in terms of late pregnancy, how do things change there in terms of um, what people need to think about as they enter that last stage of pregnancy and labor itself? What are the ways for them to think about nutrition and what they're eating at that stage?
Yeah, definitely. So at that point, the baby is taking up a lot of space, and mama's stomach cannot manage to eat as much food as they potentially are hungry for. So at that point in time, it would be maybe tuning into, I guess more of a grazing, but I'm not going to prescribe that. It would be, if there are foods that you enjoy eating, allow yourself to eat them often and frequently throughout the day so that you're keeping your energy up without feeling really overfull, because then that can cause acid reflux for some people. And be uncomfortable, and the more you can avoid or reduce those sorts of symptoms, the better. Something that I haven't really touched on is avoiding certain foods during pregnancy. And again, the jury is
Yeah,
starting to question some of the stuff about raw eggs and rare steak, and all of the things that a doctor would say, don't eat this, don't eat that, like certain types of fish because it's got heavy metals, and stay away from seafood. And it's really up to you what you choose to do. So,
yeah,
being sensible and practicing discernment, and what if you feel like you can stomach it. Obviously, the first trimester is the place that most people are worried about, that because that's when the baby is at the most risk. But if you're sensible about these things, and as you move through your pregnancy, the risk decreases, there's no issue with eating a runnier egg or a slightly rarer steak. And, If that doesn't feel safe for the mum, don't eat it. Don't say, oh, well, I heard Stacey say it's okay, so I'm going to force myself to eat this thing, even though it still doesn't feel right for
Yeah.
me. It's coming back to, what feels safe. And as, I think we were talking about before we hit record, is whatever decisions the mother makes, if she is comfortable with that decision, it's the right decision for her. Because at the end of the day, the whole pregnancy, birth, and labor experience, how we reflect on that after the event is based on how we felt during the event. So if it feels safe and if it feels right, then yes, it is. But if it doesn't, then it's not for you. So even at that late stage of pregnancy, really taking your power back, owning your decisions, and not letting anybody else make those choices for you, but also being open to exploring different options. I mean, I've heard certain things like, some doctors will say, okay, have some alcohol, that's not a big deal. That's a big no-no for me, because I know that there is plenty of research to show that fetuses should not have any alcohol. That barrier of the placenta, like everything that you eat is going straight through there into your baby. It's
Yeah.
not good. But
There's no way to sugarcoat that one, is there? There just isn't.
There just isn't. Yeah, that's a big no-no from me as my opinion, and some science backs that. But again, up to the mum, whatever feels good for you. But with other stuff around food, it's eat smaller meals. There are some, I guess, old wives' tales that can help to set you up for success, like eating 6 dates every night from 36 weeks onwards is going to start to soften your cervix and start to loosen things up, ready to prep and let your body know that you are, nearing that phase of getting ready to open up to let baby move down. And pineapple juice as well is another one that's meant to be really good towards that pointy end. And then during, I guess we're talking about the end of pregnancy, but even going into labor, like making sure that you're really hydrated, that you've got lots of electrolytes going in. So things like adrenal cocktails, which is half, I guess you could do half a cup or a full cup. So it's like equal parts orange juice and coconut water with some Himalayan salt, is a really good way to get vitamin C into your body, to get all of your electrolytes into your body, and to get a good dose of energy into your body through the natural fruit sugars. And then the salt helps it to go inside the cells. So it's really hydrating, really nutrient dense, and it's coming from real, drinks rather than powders and things like that. So those sorts of things.
That's interesting. And in labor, what should a birth partner do if they are concerned about a mother not calling for enough fluids? They're concerned about hydration. Is that what's the way to handle that? And is it okay just to be led by the mother exclusively?
That is a very open-ended question, or a hard one to answer, because in some situations it's important to be aware of cues. Because if you've never birthed before, like somebody that's birthed twice, my first experience, I did not know what I was doing. I needed a little bit more guidance. We had conversations about what I would like to do and what was important. But there would be times where I would forget, because once you enter that liminal phase and you're between worlds and things are a bit crazy, you're very suggestive. And so if somebody offered me a little sip of something, I would take it. And I probably needed that to happen. So I love that question. But then there'll be some mums who will, I would offer it. The birthing partner would be great if they could offer it, but then the mum might just put up their hand and not be able to talk, but just say, no, I don't need that right now. And just, not getting offended if they're not able to articulate what they need, but they can give you body cues. So if a mother is licking their lips and it looks like they've got dry lips, then you read the physical cues, even if they're not verbally up. So that's a really important question. And then, the adrenal cocktails at that time are really handy with the orange juice, coconut water, and salt. Or there's also something called Labor Aid, which is coconut water. You can put some electrolyte powder in there with some honey, because some mums, when they, deep into labor, they're not going to feel like eating anymore, but they need to keep their fuel up. They need to keep their energy up. So even,
Right.
all kind of health goes out the window at that point, and it's like, what can I get into me? Maybe it's lollies, maybe it's chocolate, whatever the mum feels like, have all snacks on
Right. No
hand.
judgment. Yeah.
It's like a marathon. We just got to get through, if it's
Yeah.
a long labor, like my first labor was 30 hours, my second one was only like 8 or 9 hours. So you don't know what you're up for. And just to have, lots of different things on offer, and
Yeah.
just to see what they feel up to. But fluids is great. Yeah.
Okay. And then in the postpartum period, so third stage, babies with mother. Is there anything that people need to think specifically about there, or is there again is that mother listening to her body, calling for things? Is there any suggestions that we can make there?
As a preparation piece or a conversation with birth partner or birth team, ask her what her favorite food is, and then have that on hand ready for that postpartum. So I know in hospitals they often have like Vegemite toast is kind of like the thing that they go to.
Right, right.
For me, with my second birth, I was birthing at home, so I was very, blessed to just have everything on hand that I wanted. And the first thing that I wanted to eat was, I had like chocolate covered blueberries for during labor, and I just kept eating more of those because I was still on a bit of a high, waiting for my placenta to birth and holding and snuggling my baby. But I just wanted to eat by then because it was like, okay, marathon is over, get the food in. So I think just having everything that she usually loves on hand and then offering it. And then my first meal was eggs on toast afterwards.
Right. Okay. I think I remember in hospitals in Britain, it's tea, hot tea and toast is always available. That's what's offered. Yeah, but blueberries with covered in chocolate, that sounds really good. Fantastic. That's fantastic. That's great. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover now? I think that we've been really good. It's been a really good guide through the topic. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to surface before we move to finish?
I think, speaking about nutrition is one aspect of nourishment. And we kind of alluded to a little bit of how else a person can nourish themselves, but really, I really want to, bring it home that it's not just about the food that we put in our bodies. It's about the thoughts that we're thinking. Can you use affirmations, or can you look into some form of meditation? And that doesn't have to be monk-like meditation where people
Right.
sit, cross-legged and chant. Like, that's a beautiful form, one form of meditation. But for a mum trying to connect with their baby and their body and learn how to trust their intuition, instinctive or intuitive style of meditation. And there are guided meditations online that people can use, especially women, especially mothers, to make that meditation experience really juicy and to really go inward into their body and starting to connect with, that mental emotional aspect and allowing themselves to slow down and calm down. That's nourishment. Like, that is, a big part
Right.
of
In the wider
nourishing.
sense. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
all aspects of self.
Yeah, I think that's really coming through, and I think when you talk about meditation, I think you're talking about the practicing and finding out the best ways for you to enter the relaxed state, and the ability to do that in labor when things can be going in unexpected directions. The ability to come back to that state is such a great tool, isn't it?
Really powerful. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
fantastic. Well, I know that we could talk a lot more about this topic, but that's been a really great route in, and I really appreciate you sharing that experience, both your personal and professional experience with our viewers. So thanks for that, Stacey. Now, if people want to know more about this area or to find out more about you, what are the options for them to do that?
Definitely. So I mainly speak to my community through Instagram, and my handle is at bubbly, BUBBLY_Stace, STACE. We're
Yeah.
kind of between phases. My husband and I were running our online nutrition business for over 7 years, The Chief Life. There is still an Instagram page there if anybody wants to go back and see any of the content from the last 7 years. But we're now
Yeah.
transitioning More so, I'm working on helping couples get pregnant in kind of a one-on-one setting, and then, you know, helping them prep for their labor and birth experience, either online or from home. So if people do want to reach out to me through my Instagram, I would love to connect with you there. I love helping people get pregnant. I love, you know, helping them with how they're going to birth their baby, all of that stuff, you know, having a hospital birth for my first babe and then a home birth, free birth for my second babe. I've got a lot of information to share, and I've done a lot of research, and can point people in the right direction. And I've got an ebook called the Baby Making ebook. If anybody is interested in grabbing that, I'm more than happy to gift that to you. It's usually 30 Aussie dollars. But if you want to contact me through my Instagram or email me at Stacey Turner, STACEY TURNER1986 at gmail.com, and I will happily send that ebook through to you with it's got a bunch of information on, you know, how to get pregnant and looking after your body whilst you're pregnant.
Fantastic. That's great. Stacey, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.